I'm Lucy Hoyle and I'm a cat behaviourist. So I work with difficult cats all the time, and today I'm going to take you through 3 ways to unintentionally screw up your cat, make them unhappy, and potentially trigger behaviour problems like aggression and euro marking. So let's jump in. So first is giving them attention on our terms rather than their terms. So cats will vary on how much affection they like, how much they like being stroked or picked up. And some cats will tell you when they don't want to be stroked. So if you go to stroke a cat and it hisses at you, or it bites you, or it ducks down under your hand so they're flat as a pancake when you try to stroke them, it's quite obvious that they don't want to be stroked. And we pretty much know to leave them alone. But there will be lots of cats who don't necessarily love it, but they just tolerate it. So with these cats, then you'll see that if you pick them up, they'll stay there, but they're not really loving it. Or they might struggle to get down, but if you hold them tight enough, then they'll stay still. This isn't really the behaviour that we want to see from our cats. What we're looking for when we're stroking them or picking them up is signs that they're loving it and they really want to do that. So we're looking for them approaching us and coming over and being like, yay, will you pick me up or will you stroke me? We want to see them rubbing their faces on our legs or hands. Like if you reach out your hand towards them, do they rub their face on your hand? And when you pick them up, are they like rubbing their faces on your head? And are they snuggling down? Are they not making any attempt to get down? Because these are the signs that they are actually enjoying it. And this is what we want to see. So those cats in the middle that don't necessarily hate it, but they're just tolerating it and they're just waiting for it to be over, here's sort of the danger zone. Because the more you do this, the more uncomfortable your cat will be around you. And so you're more likely to cause them any sort of stress if you pick them up and carry them around when they don't really want that to happen. And we know that stress leads to behaviour problems. So be mindful here of what your cat actually wants from you and try to put everything on their terms rather than ours. Also be aware of cats that get overstimulated when you stroke them, because it's not normal for you to be stroking and your cat to be biting your hand. Even if it's gently, I know people talk about love bites and nips just to say they've had enough. They shouldn't need to reach that point. So what we should be doing is looking at their body language and sort of sussing out whether they are enjoying it or whether they've had enough and they're just tolerating. So look for the ears going back, look for the tail swishing, look for that sharp look around as if to say like, no, I don't like that anymore, because you can be sure that a bite is going to follow soon. Give them the opportunity to tell you that they want you to continue. So give them a little stroke and stop and then see what they do. If they just ignore you or just look the other way, they're not really feeling it and they don't want any more. Whereas if they get up, if they come over, if they're like, oh yeah, and they like rub their head on your hand to say, come on, then you know that it's a green light to go ahead. So if your cat likes to bite you as you're stroking them, take that as a sign that they don't like that much. Because the more they do that, you might find that the warning signs, they don't bother with them anymore because they've done all that and it hasn't stopped. So now they bite every time. So if your cat's biting you when you stroke them, then keep it much more brief and try to rein it in a little bit, because they are trying to tell you something. What I would lump in here is rough play, because rough play is, in my opinion and in my experience, one of the most dangerous things you can do with your cat. I have another video I will link to at the end on rough play, but I have seen cats who, the cats with the most serious aggression are the cats who have been played with roughly in the past. So people that reach down towards them with their hands and they grab their faces and they rub them and they flip them over onto their backs and they rub their tummies, and they, from us, sometimes it looks like they're loving it and that they're kicking your hand and they're rolling over and they're trying to, like, they're stopping and they're jumping back and attacking your hand. It looks like they're playing, but what you'll find here is that in this scenario, they're practicing their biting, they're getting very, very overstimulated, and they're considering your hands to be part of the game. Lots of cats do not enjoy this, but they will still engage because they haven't got any other choice, because you're coming towards them and doing all that stuff. So what I have found in this scenario is that for some cats, when they eventually become stressed by something or scared by something, the aggression there is much more serious than for the cats that don't play rough or we haven't played rough with, because they're well rehearsed at biting skin and they're like, the play biting's here and their serious biting is up here. So it's much, much worse. So please don't play rough with your cat. I know it looks like they love it, but it's just not worth the risk. And the cats I've seen, they've really, really struggled. Secondly, is getting cross at them. So here, obviously, that tends to happen when your cat has done something that we don't like. So it might be that they have bitten us, or they've weed somewhere, or they're being annoying, they're meowing all the time, or they're trying to steal your food, or whatever it could be. There is never a scenario where it helps us get cross. And by cross, I mean like you might shout at them or push them out the way or use a water spray or do any of these things that you're trying to tell your cat, I'm actually not happy with you now, I'm very cross at you. The reason this is such a danger and the reason why you might screw them up is because a cat is not a social species generally. They're not like built to be social. They've adapted well to living with us and they do have good relationships with us, which is lovely. But their biology hasn't caught up yet. So every single relationship they have with a person or another animal is built on trust. So obviously we facilitate that in that we care for them, we feed them, we interact with them in a way that they like, and we build up that trust with them and they learn to trust us back. And that is perfect. That's what we want. But the moment we start changing that, the moment we start being a bit unpredictable and sometimes telling them off, sometimes shouting, sometimes smacking, anything they find horrible, that trust begins to break down. So hopefully it won't impact your overall relationship if you've done it in the past. But if you continue, or if it becomes, if it's quite severe, in that you're really cross, then you could risk breaking down your whole relationship. So this is definitely going to lead to stress-related problems. And if you've got a problem already, so if you're cross at your cat for urine marking and tell them off, that urine marking is going to get a lot worse. Plus, you'll end up with additional problems like your cat might be aggressive to you because you scared them, or they might avoid you now because they're scared, so they hide much more. So this is just fueling the stress, and it's not helpful, and it doesn't even stop the problem like that you're cross about. So it's not helpful and it could potentially make things worse. What we can do instead is have a look at the problem that you're cross about and think about what the underlying reason is that they're doing that. So if they're scratching your sofas, then have a think about what other scratch outlets you have nearby and what you have for them to use. Or if they're peeing somewhere, then have a think about why that might be. If it's really difficult to figure it out, or you're stumped and you can't really understand why, then call in some behavioural help or have a look through the other videos on my channel and see if you can unpick the problem, because that's the biggest job of a behaviourist, is to unpick the issue and get to the bottom of why it's happening, and then we know how to change it. So getting cross is just not in that, and hopefully if you can sort the problem, then there's no need to get cross at them. And finally is to expect your cat to fit in with a human environment. So what I mean by this is that sometimes I go to people's houses and you wouldn't even know they had a cat. There's no cat furniture, it's absolutely pristine, and I look around and I think, oh, have you even got a cat? So the problem here is that for some cats, that's totally fine in that they have a more independent lifestyle and they might just come and go, especially if they've got outside access, come and go, sleep on the bed during the day if they want to, do their own thing, and that's fine. But for lots of cats, particularly those with just indoor access or in a multi-cat household, they have trouble establishing their territory in this sort of environment because there's nothing they can call their own. So if there's no furniture there just for the cats and they have to share the bed or the sofa, in a multi-cat household there'll be competition for these areas. So you're going to end up with fighting or tension there. And like we wash these things, like you wash your bedding every now and again, and so the cats lose their sort of mark on that. Whereas if you had something like a cat tree or the cat's own beds and plenty of them, or blankets over the sofa arms, things that they sleep on, that they feel are part of their territory and they're their territory markers, then that gives them a much more sense of security and safety. So cats in this situation, when they have a good sense of territory, they're much more resilient to stress, because if something scary happens, it's fine, I'll just go to the top of the cat tree. Or they go to those safe places that they know that are theirs and they feel most confident. Cats that have nothing like that, they panic, they don't know what to do with themselves, they feel like a little bit of a deer caught in the headlights. So add in as much cat-friendly stuff as you can. If they don't use it straight away, move it around. Sometimes it's the place in the territory rather than the stuff. So if you've bought a fancy cat bed and they don't use it, try to move it to another location. And I would avoid any sort of open plan as well. Like I wouldn't expect you to transform your whole home, but especially if you've got a more nervous cat, sometimes it's difficult for them to travel from A to B because they feel like deer caught in the headlights. They're worried and they feel vulnerable. So add in little nooks and crannies, places for them to sleep, places for them to hide, and create those spaces. Like on your dining table, put a tablecloth over the table. So when they're underneath, they're obscured from the rest of the room. They can hide, they can hang out. They've got these little pockets of safety throughout your home. And finally, don't be too overzealous with the cleaning. So if you notice your cat likes to face rub on the door frames or on the table legs, then leave these marks there, because this is your cat establishing their home, as their territory. So we don't want to be washing these off, because then they'll start feeling like their territory is not 100% safe, and they'll start doubling down on their marks, and you might find they swap to scratching, which leaves a more permanent mark, or peeing, which obviously no one wants that. So embrace your cat as part of your household, give them that sense of territory, and they'll be much happier for it, and they'll be much more resilient to stress as well. So tell me all about your cats in the comments, because I'd love to hear all about them and their behaviour. Here's that video I mentioned about the dangers of rough play, so do have a watch for that if you're worried about your cat, and I will see you next time for another video. Take care.